welcome back to another edition of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast presented by DreamCricket. I'm your host, Peter Delapenna, and today we have part 2, the interview with Emerging Cricket USA correspondent Nate Hayes. Pick up where we left off in the previous discussion, talking about all things cricket and non-cricket, as well as Nate's journey into becoming a valued contributor within the emerging cricket family, not just as a writer, but as a graphic designer and a podcast host and a YouTube host. And we go into those things and more in part 2 with Nate. But before we get to that, I want to remind everybody that the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast, presented by DreamCricket, is also sponsored by Moosa Cricket Stadium, the first and original turf wicket facility in the state of Texas. For more information, call 713-534-2195. That's Moosa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas. And one other reminder, again, the interview with Nate had user malfunction on the Zoom portion of the call, so you don't see me at all in the video for the duration of the podcast interview if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening on any of the other podcast platforms, then your experience should not be affected in any way.
We talked about a lot of things yesterday, your experiences in Morrisville and trying to transition into cricket, discovering cricket. And we spent a lot of time talking about what it's like being an American, trying to get involved in the cricket scene and all the things that entails. One of the questions I didn't ask you, which I always love asking people in our situation, what was your wife, your kids, and your other family members, your mom, anybody else, what was their reaction when you started to get involved in cricket and you started to have conversations about what you were doing in your free time?
This is probably the toughest thing about transitioning to cricket from other sports, because I love playing ice hockey, and one of the great things about hockey is the men's league games happen, sometimes at a rink you can get it so that you play, if the rink has multiple sheets of ice, like the one up in Wake Forest here, you can join a league where you only play on Wednesday nights, and it'll be after 9 p.m. Sometimes the games start at 11:30 p.m., but that works for me. And then everybody's asleep in your house. Your kids are put to bed, and you just run up the street and you play hockey, and you don't miss anything. That's what I love about hockey. Cricket, there's no way to do anything like that. You can't sneak around and squeeze it in. I mean, you just can't squeeze cricket in. You're going to practice with people. It's in the outside in the sunlight, and if it's indoors, the place usually closes by 9. Yeah, so it's funny. That was the toughest thing, was when I was talking to my wife early on about, you don't want to come out and say, I'm going to play a 40 overs, hey, I'm playing. Well, yeah, you do say that. You come right out boldly. I'm playing 40 overs game this weekend, Saturday. Okay. And then you play the 40 overs game, and you look at your phone, and there's a lot of missed calls, and you realize, and you should always explain what that means. But I mean, people find out right away. You're going all day long, especially because a lot of our grounds, like I said, are an hour from my house. So you're talking about an hour drive to play 40 overs aside. Nobody's in a hurry. When it's a 40 overs, when it's a T20 game, there's a little bit more pressure to get the game done because there's a game after yours. But if it's a 40 overs day game, there's nobody playing after you. I mean, they try to be strict about the game times, but they're gonna last a long time anyways. So yeah, that's a big challenge is how long it takes to play cricket. And then you go out there and you get out for a first ball duck, or you give up 17 runs in your first over and you don't get a second over, and it's just the worst. Especially that can be the worst. So I'm not a big fan of playing that format, because also it's very hot here in the summer. It is wicked hot here in the sun, very humid. So you stand out in the sun, sometimes there's not a lot of shade to sit. It's brutal. That is the toughest thing about the sport, is how long of a commitment it is to me.
But just from a very basic standpoint, so going back to 2015, you start watching this sequence with Wahab Riaz, Shane Watson.
Oh yeah.
Your wife sees this, or is kind of looking over your shoulder. What the hell are you doing? What are you watching? That kind of stuff. As you're getting into the game, what was their reaction to your newfound interest in a very foreign sport?
It was, I mean, in the nicest way to say it is that it was just complete apathy, really. It was nobody cared. Nobody cared, because it was just, we have so many great sports in this country. It's tough I get excited about something. I want to talk to people about it, but there's enough. It's tough to break even with your own family, it's tough to, sometimes people are very curious when you tell them how the games go, when you explain to them like what's great about cricket. That's the cool part, is you don't get bogged down in the rules, but you say, here are the exciting things that happen. People like that. But yeah, my wife she didn't really care that much. She kind of did. She was like, why don't you just play more hockey? Just play another night of hockey, and you don't have to take on this whole new thing. And it was tricky because when I first started, I practiced with the guys for a couple of months, and then it was my second daughter was born, and then it was this long period of time where it's like, I just couldn't be available to practice or to play because for several months. So it was like that rest of that summer was kind of, because she was born in early June, so the rest of that summer was kind of shot. I didn't play hockey or cricket for several months, and then the next year I got back into it. And it's such a time commitment. That's the toughest thing. And really, my wife doesn't really care about cricket. She's not a big sports person, and that's totally fine, because we both have our own interests, and we both have interests that intersect each other, that overlap. So but the cricket is on the Nate only side of the Venn diagram. So I try to get my kids into it a little bit. They like watching the women's cricket, and my oldest likes to play. She likes the challenge of playing with me. So she likes to try to get me out. She loves to bowl to me and try to get me out.
One of the other people you brought up briefly in our first chat was somebody who's been heavily influential in cricket in North Carolina in general, and I know you've had quite a lot of interactions with him, Alvin Keeltron, who, for people who don't know, he's been a longtime resident in the Raleigh area in North Carolina, and was somebody who was really a strong ambassador for cricket and helping to get people involved and get their attention at the ICC and just other aspects of that, to showcase the fact that, hey, this legend of the game has faith and belief and is actively involved in cricket in the community. So why shouldn't you? What are some of your favorite interactions with Alvin, and what has he meant to you personally?
Oh, Alvin is fantastic. First of all, he knows so much. The old saying, he's forgotten more about cricket than I'll ever know. He has so much practical knowledge. It's fun to talk to him about cricket, his experiences. That's so much fun, just sitting listening to his stories. He's a funny guy. He's a happy guy. And but yeah, he's played a big part in me taking to the sport, because when you right from the start, when I started learning about it, I found out about who Alvin was, and he was always around coaching kids, and he pays attention. It would be funny because we would be practicing and he would be doing stuff with the kids, and then he would see something I was doing it, out of the corner of his eye, he'd take a glance over, probably at the worst possible time, probably seeing me make a complete idiot of myself, and you remark on it, like, later on he'll say something like, what were you doing there, or something like that. But yeah, he's very cool. He's got a lot of passion for the kids. He's done a whole lot for the area here, for the country, and he's irreplaceable. There's no doubt about it. And I know you talked to Mark about him, you talked to Gitika about him. Yeah, he's fun. I've taken a couple of lessons from him. I've helped him out in some of his clinics, just giving throwdowns to kids and things like that, and fielding with the kids and things. He has everyone's respect here, deservingly so. It's really cool to have him right around the corner. It's funny because when I meet people that like cricket, if I meet people of a certain age that like cricket, I always mention, hey, do you know who Alvin Keeltron is? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, he's a friend of mine. And they're like, wow. So it's a nice icebreaker when you're meeting new people that are into cricket. It's just kind of funny that he's here, and he's so easy to talk to and easy going. Yeah, it's really cool having access to him.
Now, he was influential in helping to get a lot of the stuff moving with regards to Church Street Park opened up in 2015. And that's one of the reasons why you said you got into cricket in the first place.
Yeah.
I want to ask you specifically about the impact of that facility and the growth of cricket since then. Obviously, the groundswell of support in the Triangle Research Park area was significant just to get that ground built in the first place.
Yeah.
The growth of cricket. But just looking at, for example, the USA Cricket membership rules that were recently released, there are more than 1,100 registered members in the Triangle Cricket League that are identified as eligible voters in, I hope, the election, or depending on which side of the fence you're on, you don't want the election to happen if you think it's going to be illegitimate. 1,100 people out of, or 1,100 plus people out of around 12,700. So it's just short of 10% of the entire registered playing base, official registered playing base. Obviously, you look at some data, there's definitely a lot of leagues who have not signed up and a lot of teams and clubs who have not signed up. There's, by some data estimates, 20,000, 40,000, 100,000, 200,000. But going by the official data, the fact that there are just short of 10% of the entire registered membership base in USA Cricket is out of the Triangle Cricket League. That is huge. And that, again, is an indication of the impact that Church Street Park has had. So just in your time, it coincided with the opening of Church Street Park, your involvement in cricket in the community in Morrisville. What, in your eyes, has been the impact of Church Street Park in helping to mushroom that growth even further?
I think it's been really big, especially for, in multiple ways, in terms of growing the league, growing support for the league, and helping the league get sponsors, the quality of the play of the youth. All of these things are really big, and you can chalk a lot of that up to Church Street Park. And the league has grown tremendously since I started playing in 2015. It's grown. It's crazy how much it's grown. It grows every year. It grows too fast, in my opinion. But it's like there's no stopping it. It's just going to keep growing fast. And if we can find more grounds, we could even add more teams. It's just. It's crazy how fast it's grown, and I think Church Street has played a big part in that. The fact that we have so many voters, that goes to the executive committee right now and the prior executive committee, and guys like Babar, Sabu, Raj. They really did make sure that we got plenty of voters. I have 14 on my own team. They wanted to make sure that we got a lot of members. And they worked very hard to do that. They put a lot of time in, so they should get a lot of credit for that. But yeah, Church Street Park had a lot to do with all of these things happening, with the league growing to the point that it has, with people caring about being a member. I think Church Street has a lot to do with that, because you have a nice ground like this, and you've been there under the lights. It's amazing, and it's just a great place to come watch a game. People want to see the ball fly there. They want to see good cricket, and they get a chance to do that at that park. So it's made a massive impact. In my opinion, it's made a big impact. People want to play there. That's the one thing about increasing. Obviously, we want to see, there are people in the league that care much more about their own cricket than youth cricket or American cricket. There's plenty of people.
I don't think that's unique to Triangle Cricket League, Nate.
It's not, and it's not unique to adult sports in general, but there are people who, that's one thing, that's the downside, is the political ramifications locally.
I would love to see a Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm sketch with a cricket team, a local cricket team, and the USA comes to town. It doesn't have to be Morrisville, but USA comes to town and they get booted off the fields by the local cricket team. And something like that. You've seen on Curb Your Enthusiasm the slow pitch softball sketches and things like that, the comedy that comes out of the softball league that Larry's in, and I just think if they swapped out the slow pitch softball and they turned it into club standard cricket, there would be a great episode in the offing for Curb Your Enthusiasm, because, and I think we've talked about this too, one of the other things that happens in US cricket that is almost straight out of Curb Your Enthusiasm is the last season's story arc, or 2 seasons ago, whatever it was, the Spike Shop. How many cricket leagues have been started that are essentially spite cricket leagues? Because somebody lost an election and they said, screw this, I'm going to start up my own league just to spite so-and-so and try and steal votes and get more support and become more powerful politically. And
instead of it being about the beans, like in those episodes, remember, it's all about the beans. Remember that? It's all about the new ground that I'm promising. Like that's more like the, like when there's ever a rival that shows up in an area, they're always like, we've got these great plans for a new ground, an hour away or something like that. That's always how it happens. It seems.
But is one of these new grounds that's promised? Does it have one of those magic urinals that Larry put in his Spike coffee shop that led to mayhem?
Not unlike that show, it is difficult to use the bathroom sometimes at some of these grounds. No. Yeah, I think it's difficult because you do have a lot of people who they know that if the more USA cricket, the more minor league cricket that plays there, the less adult cricket there's going to be.
But having said that, you say less adult cricket, but it has spurred tremendous growth from my vantage point anyway, as an outsider, youth cricket, because you take a scene like happened in 2018 with the T20 World Cup qualifier, and prior to that, who was basing themselves out of North Carolina or who was coming out of North Carolina just organically. And then 3-4 years later, you've got Rohan Fadki and Aviram Bolasetti coming out of North Carolina, making the USA Under-19 team. Jasker Malhotra moves to North Carolina. Other guys have toyed with the idea of moving to North Carolina, specifically for that facility. Geetika Kadali, again, born and raised on the West Coast, but she comes to Church Street Park for a youth tournament as a teenager. And her parents say, despite all the great academies there are in Northern California, they don't have anything that compares to Church Street Park. We're pulling up our family and moving to the East Coast specifically so we can have access to this facility. So the impact that it's had on junior cricket in that way, and the mushroom effect that that's had on cricket as a whole, I find incredible. And I'm curious, what have you witnessed firsthand beyond some of those things? And again, Bhumika Badraju, playing for the USA Women's Under-19 team, and some of the other players.
Yeah, it's there were several guys who made the 26-man U19 selection camp. Of course, obviously Adi Gupta hurt himself, so we could have actually he eventually did make the U19 roster in the men's national championship. But we have so many good players here, so many up and coming players. And the thing is, like you said, Geetika moved here. It wasn't it's not a surprise anymore to have somebody want to move here for cricket. It's kind of normal. Like if you talk to minor league cricket players, everyone wants to come here. Everybody wants to. You talk to people all around the country, and they want to come and play here. And it's a combination of several things. For the youth, it's definitely the ground. Alvin Keeltron is here because as Geetika told you, her family felt comfortable moving here because of the ground and because they knew that there was a good coach here for her, and the community supports her. They support the youth cricket here pretty well. People know who the youth cricketers are. When you go to a Morrisville Cardinals game, if the youth players, if the young U19 guys aren't getting the chances that the community thinks they should get, you hear about it. If none of them batted in the top 6 or something, you hear about it. If Avram Bolasetti bowls 1 over instead of 3 or 4, you hear about it. People talk about it, and that's a great thing. So community supports the young guys, and there's so many. The U15 age group right now is phenomenal. There's so many good youth in the area that grew up all along playing here. And then when you throw in the people who want to come here into the mix, it's like I see in the future, at first when we got the minor league team, I remember having a discussion with somebody about maybe a second one in the area or something. Like this was just it wasn't even speculation. It was just a regular conversation like we're having now. And somebody was, we could even maybe have a second team. And I was like, there's not really the talent here to support 2 minor league teams. And there isn't maybe right now, but everyone wants to move here. So if you just let people move here who want to, then we could have 2 minor league cricket teams. And then you increase the class of players, the class of play in the area, all that stuff like that. All that stuff could happen here because people want to come here. They want to, or just come here on their own. They just want to be in this area. There's so many good things that tied into that. So many advantages of this area. It's hard to find a disadvantage, honestly, because it's cheaper than the other big hubs of cricket in the country. It's cheaper than San Francisco. It's getting more expensive, but it's cheaper than San Francisco by a lot. It's cheaper than New York. So, because of that park is like the big foundational. That's the big reason people want to be here is the park and the community. And then obviously throw Alvin in the mix, and why wouldn't you want to be here?
Well, whether you list it as 1A or 1B or 1C, you touched on it there, reference to the community support, the volunteer support, second to none in the country. Events that are held in Florida, events that are held in Texas, California, the people try and they have this vision we talked about yesterday where they hope you build something and people will come out. It doesn't happen. It's not, you can't just wave a magic wand. And yet in Morrisville, from day one when they've had tournaments there, it's been consistent. It's never waned, and in many ways it's gotten stronger. And I'm just curious, for you who's been actively involved in a lot of the things that go unpaid as a volunteer, is this unique to cricket in Morrisville, or is this something that is part of the spirit and the fabric of the community regardless of cricket or any other sport?
Well, I think there's a lot of, because my kids play in a local Catholic soccer league that the Catholic church near us set up because they just wanted to have a recreational thing. Because there's a huge, we have the largest youth soccer organization in the country in Wake County, and it's massive, but it's very competitive too. It's like,
For a frame of reference, so how many people were we talking about, registered junior players or players in general? Hundreds into the thousands?
Yeah, it's thousands. For the largest group, the largest youth organization in the country, there's thousands. But for the local one that we do, the one at the church, which they did just for recreational purposes, just so the kids could have something fun to do. It's it's $60 a season for the kids, and you get a shirt, and it's volunteer run, and that works. That whole league, that runs smoothly. That's hundreds of kids. So the other one's like tens of thousands, but that's more expensive, it's more competitive, all those things. Yeah, so there are little options for people to do things in the area. I've seen a lot of volunteers in this area. I think there's a lot more than in most parts of the country, I would guess. The Triangle Cricket League volunteer community is really impressive against anybody. I would put them against any league, any sport. They're really impressive, and they want a good tournament for whoever shows up. For if you bring a youth tournament here, they want to make it run well. They want to keep the reputation going. And so I've had a couple of times where somebody was disappointed because something didn't live up to what was expected, and it makes me angry because these volunteers here, the better we do, the more demand there is. The better the volunteers here do. I say we, but I'm not even in the top half of the volunteers here as far as the time they put in for cricket related activities. But those people put in so much work, and the more that happens, the more people want to bring events here, want to bring the NYCL, all these other things here, and the more is expected from people at a short notice. And they still do it, and they put up with some things I wouldn't put up with, but they still do it, and they're the highlight of the whole thing. The volunteers, they're always the highlight of it. It's like when people come here for a youth tournament, and sometimes people do leave a mess behind, and it's picked up by people. The president, Jono, will come by. You'll see Jono walking down the freaking road with 3 bags. He was the president before, but you'll see him walking down the road with 3 bags of trash over his shoulders. It gets done. Things get done here, and it's amazing. It's really an amazing league, and there are a lot of things that could be improved about Triangle Cricket League. There's no doubt about it, but there's a lot of things that could go more smoothly. But as for a big operation like this, you already saw there's what was it, 11,052 or so members.
1100, not 11.
I'm sorry, 1152. Yeah, and that's not even half. But that's probably about half of the league as far as the whole league goes. As far as every aspect of the league: hard tennis, leather ball, women's, girls, youth, all that stuff. So there's a lot. It's a huge league, and it's really, whoever is president of this league puts in incredible hours. It's not something that anybody really wants. The amount of work, nobody's going to raise their hand unless they love it. It's impressive. I would put it up against any volunteer organization in the country.
You talked about things that TCL does right in terms of things that could be improved, things that not necessarily are distinct to TCL, but in terms of the sport in general and people involved in the sport. Again, whether it's TCL or independent of TCL, as somebody who was new to the game 7 years ago and had to overcome various obstacles to try and maintain your passion and your support for the sport, whether as a player, as a fan, now as a writer, graphic designer, you wear many hats, Nate. Video editor, YouTube producer, so many things that you do. But there are times when it is a struggle, and people are not necessarily welcoming, and it can be challenging to sit there. And sometimes you think, just why do I stay involved with this sport? Why do I put up with this nonsense? I could have so many things I could fill my time with that would be so less stressful, have so much less angst, have
Right.
so much more enjoyment. What, in your eyes, are some things, just as a general cricket fan and a general cricket player, that you feel are shortcomings that people or the sport in general needs to change in order to be more successful at not just recruiting somebody like you who's a newcomer to the game, but sustaining that person's interest instead of, after one or two experiences, pushing them away, because that does happen quite a lot?
Well, I have to say that the times that I'm like, sometimes you know how it is with the cricket culture in the United States, or just maybe the sport in general. I don't even know if it's different. But like sometimes I do think, my gosh, why am I into this? Why did I choose this? But when I feel that way, it's not because of local things. it's it's much more at the national and international level. When I see what the ICC did or didn't do, or the obvious choice they could have made that they didn't make, or when like national governing body drama, that's to me the biggest burden. But ultimately across the whole country, the things I've noticed is like, I think we've talked about this, I don't know how many times, how many people want to burn everything down just to plant their flag in the rubble and say, this is mine. How many people don't want to join up when something good starts to happen, and it's got a lot of potential, and it's got obvious potential, and it's bigger than something that other people can do. How many people want to turn their nose up at that thing because it wasn't their thing? And then when they do their thing, they expect everyone to praise them. And, it's like so many people don't want to just join up and say, let's do this all together. Let's all have, there's a million ways you can help out, but everybody wants the library named after them, pretty much. That's the biggest problem, is a lot of, that's what kills me is people can't see a good thing. And some of that is perpetuated by the fact that I feel like the board should be a little bit more strict with what they sanction and what they don't. The official national T20 league right now is minor league cricket, and it's called minor league cricket. There are 80 other things sanctioned that are called like world's greatest cricket league or something like that. Like the American best. What's that?
Or minor cricket league, just switching the letters around.
Which is just switching the letters around. And then you sanction that guy's tournaments who's trying to make a league that's obviously competing with minor league. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you sanction that? Why wouldn't you say, hey, look, we'll sanction your league, but you got to call it like the Piedmont Cricket Tournament or something. You can't call it super duper American Premier Special League or something. To me, that's important, because everybody who starts these leagues tries to get everybody else to think that they're the greatest things in the world. And maybe that's not as harmful as I think it is, but too many people don't want to join up. That's, to me, the biggest thing. The biggest problem with cricket in this country is that too many people there. Everybody wants to be in charge, and not enough people want to join up. And around here, it's not as big of a problem, I think, as it is elsewhere. But we still have bad actors in TCL. There's plenty of bad
50%, you said it's roughly 50% of the league has signed up to be members. That might sound like 50% of the people are against, but actually, compared to all the other leagues across the country, that's an incredible sign-up membership rate.
It's amazing.
You've got other leagues where you might be lucky to have 5% or 1% of the players in the league who are members.
It's really something else. And then this is another thing. The last year they said that there were, remember when they said they managed to get 20,000 was what around 20,000, and now we see the list and it's about 12,000. So that's interesting, but 12,000 is nothing to turn your nose up to. That's a good job. But we talked before about how many Eric Parthen was able to get, and he did a really good job. He was elbows deep in it, sending emails to individuals trying to get 10,000 people or whatever, and so it's impressive whenever you can get 10,000 people that are members. That's great. That's excellent. But there's so many questions all the time. So like you said, like,
well, I'm pulling up the press release right now to further your point. In the press release that was put out March 19th, 2021, about the lawsuit that was filed by Srini Salva and Veena Pasike, against the other board members and Ian Higgins, the CEO at the time. The first bullet point in the press release says, USA Cricket has just concluded a very successful membership recruitment drive that has led to huge numbers of individuals registering for membership, which will lead to an increase in its membership numbers from approximately 700 in December 2020 to nearly 20,000 by the time the process is completed within a few weeks. So they claimed, quote, quote, nearly 20,000. And then 9 months, 10 months later, we see the actual data released. 12,700 of the loosest interpretation of nearly 20,000, you could say. But yeah, nowhere close to that. That's not even 2/3 of 20,000.
I think they just assumed that all the fancy guys that submitted requests to have their league sanctioned also signed up as members. I think they just assumed that they would also sign up as members. But as we know, many of the people whose leagues are sanctioned aren't members of USA Cricket. So that's disappointing. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you took the 800 people that have a sanctioned league in this country and you combined it with our voting group, you'd have 20,000. I'm just being sarcastic, obviously, but yeah, I mean, like I said, like there's nothing in this community. Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are really irritating. I think a lot of it you can chalk up to a constitution here that was written when it was a men's only league, basically when it was a adult league, and it was written for adult clubs to be the voters. And now you have those clubs have too much power, I think, where when you have to consider youth cricket, and you should be subsidizing the youth cricket with the adult fees, in my opinion. Like our league shouldn't be all about just Nate and a bunch of other 40-year-old men going out and having a great time and getting their league fees subsidized by everybody else. It should be the other way around. It should be, well, no league member is going to vote against their own interests. They're not going to vote to raise the fees. So that's, to me,
full well, yeah, exactly, the cricket culture in America. I mean, one of my former clubs, it cracked me up. At the time, I was a student, and the membership fee was either $125 or $150, and I was a student. My income was basically a work-study job, but right. I had student loans, and I had a work-study job, and I also had a part-time job. I forget at the time, I was either working for Dick's Sporting Goods as a customer service rep, or I worked for FedEx as a package loader overnight. I worked the overnight shift from like 11 p.m. until 2 or 3 a.m. loading freight haul trucks to be driven out the next morning. And so I'm scraping whatever money I can get, taking any job as a college student to work. I also worked as a valet car parker, on Friday and Saturday nights at special events in Omaha at the Opera House or at Quest Center. So any money, any part-time job, any extra hours I could get, I would go for it. And I wasn't rich. I'm still not rich now, but as a student, you're a student. And
you're really not rich.
Yeah. And it wasn't exactly like surviving on ramen noodles, but it wasn't like too far off from that. And $125, $150, whatever the membership fee was, I thought was a bargain. And I was like one of the first people to write the check. Here's my membership fee for the year, $125, $150. And yet other guys in the club, if we had 15 matches for the summer, if they played 10 in September, they would start bitching to the club captain and the club president, I want $50 back from my $150 membership fee, prorated based on the fact that I only played 10 out of 15 matches, and I need a $50 refund. And these are guys who are six-figure earners, either in IT, or some of them might be doctors or other high-earning jobs, MBAs, whatever you name it. And I just thought, like, how embarrassing is this really the state of cricket in this country, that you're nickel and diming money that could be used for facility improvements? Any extra income that was raised by the club was meant to be used to improve infrastructure at our facility in terms of building nets, building practice nets, or trying to invest in money, raise enough money so that we could get irrigation at the ground, proper irrigation, so that we could cut the grass properly instead of having 6-inch high grass. If you get a sprinkler system in the field, then you can maintain it better and you can actually cut it to an acceptable standard, but you got to have the irrigation in place to do that. So all these sorts of things. No, I want my $50 back. And I don't feel like
that's crazy.
Member of the club. And that's not a unique response or a unique individual. That attitude is the majority viewpoint and the majority attitude for a lot of players and a lot of cricket clubs all around the country.
And I've not seen anybody ask for money back because of something, but I've seen people who maybe owed money who didn't want to pay because they didn't feel they got enough games or something like that.
Oh, that's classic. Yeah, stalling, just you're refusing to pay your membership fee, or the flip side, instead of paying the $150, they'll just say, oh, well, I paid today, I played today. If we have 15 matches, I'll pay $10 for today's match because that's 1/15 of the membership fee for the season.
Yeah, and that's crazy because playing, how expensive hockey is. And in when I was in Baltimore, there were 2 seasons a year for adults. There was the winter season, and they were each 25 weeks, and there was like a week in between. So there was like the winter season, there were 24 weeks and then 2 weeks between or whatever. So it would be like winter season and then summer season, and it was like split perfectly, in half. But ultimately, you were paying, by the time you were done for a calendar year of hockey, your ice time cost you probably about $1,100. And that's what I pay now. If I play here are the 3 seasons. If I play all 3 seasons, it's about $1,100 a year for ice time.
And that's and ice time. You're not paying to access it on Saturday at 11 o'clock or Saturday at noon or 1 o'clock.
You're paying for your games.
Not just that, you're accessing it, like you said before, 11 p.m. at night or 5 a.m., 6 a.m.
Because they give the kids the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock slots.
Yeah,
that's what they give the kids, which is makes sense, So you're and if you want to go play pickup, it's $10-15 a pop, and that's 5 a.m. on Thursday. So it's the kids come first in hockey, and they always do. And if you want to play, that's what you pay. And that's why when I moved across the street from that rink, I wanted to play all the time. And I was just like, I'll work here for you at least one night a week. Just, I want to pay for my ice time. And that worked out for me. I bartered that way. Not everyone gets that chance to do that, of course. But with the cricket, most leagues supplement the adult game with other fees, with either sponsorship that they get or that they could be putting into the youth program. Instead, they're putting it towards the adult teams they have to pay for. And I really feel like if you just said, okay, look, we're going to pay what it costs for your team, that's what you're going to pay. Whatever it costs per team, that's what the team should pay. If they did that, you think people would really stop playing cricket? People aren't going to stop playing cricket. You're going to have just as many people.
You could have another spite league open up next door and undercut the.
Good luck finding the ground around here. And I mean, there have been talks of that, but no one can do it because the grounds are already locked up. There is a massive shortage of sports grounds in this area for all sports. I mean, I ran a men's basketball team and we couldn't find anywhere to practice. It just couldn't, there was nothing. So there's nothing around for that.
That's basketball in North Carolina. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, it's big. Yeah. But I mean, all these things, it's really tough. And, unless you go to a public Parks and Rec department and, work with them somehow. Oh yeah. And speaking of indoor practice facilities, what's a cool thing? We talked about Jeff Hostetler was my favorite football player, because I knew his brother, because I went to church with his brother. But right around the corner from me, I could ride a bike there in 15 minutes. Is a place where it's one of the 2 places in the area you can practice indoor cricket. And it's called Pro 35 Sports, and it's owned by a guy named Chad. And I'm in there one day, and Chad's wife had a West Virginia jacket on. I was like, oh, West Virginia, my favorite quarterback went there. And she was like, oh, who is that? And I was like, Jeff Hostetler. She's like, no kidding, that's Chad's cousin. So it's just so funny that, like, it's such a small world, right? The guy is cousins with my favorite football player. So it was just like, oh wow, I feel like I'm meant to play cricket here, at this particular facility. But yeah, that's an aside for sure. But yeah, it's like, and it's probably just because of old constitutions, and teams aren't going to vote. The men's teams have a majority of the say. They're not going to vote again. They're not going to vote to raise their own prices, their own fees. Anytime any of that's talked about, it's the least popular thing in the world, and it's like kind of stuck. But yeah, that's to me the biggest problem with, I wish that people would prioritize youth more than anything else and not make it so expensive for the youth. And when you do that, you see the participation numbers around the country. There are a lot of youth playing cricket, but not nearly as many as there are 40-year-old men. Probably the 1 year of 40 years old men playing in cricket probably doubles the amount of kids playing in cricket of any age.
And not just 40-year-old men, 40-year-old men who are 35 pounds overweight and smoking a cigarette or with a can of beer open at fine leg.
Yeah. You checked off two boxes there for me.
Yet who are taking it ultra seriously. They say, and oh my God, how dare you? Don't you dare drop me from the 11. This is what I've spent my whole week building up for. This is the be all and end all of cricket in North Carolina, or cricket in New Jersey, or cricket in Nebraska, or cricket in California. And we're taking it ultra seriously. So don't you interfere with my game. And yes, I may be 40 years old and 35 pounds overweight, but I deserve to be in the 11 ahead of that 18-year-old who actually has a future in this game.
Yeah, and people shouldn't go along with that, but they do. People go along with it. That's what gets me. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure other sports are probably a little bit like that. People want to protect their spot. That's what they want to do. And I understand. And nobody owes me a slot on the team or whatever any more than they owe anyone else. But obviously we're all paying a league fee. So we all should get some games. There are teams in the area that just hoard players, and they always play the same 11 guys, and it just grosses me out. But that the team's really good, so those people that they hoard that don't get to play are just happy to be there. I don't understand it. Yeah, so but the only things that make me want to tune out are really just the nonsense that happens at the national and international levels. And I'm a big fan of USA Cricket. I'm a big fan of it. I write about it. I try to cover it because I want people to know about what's happening, or, I just my personality type. I want to talk about it. You know what I mean? But when something that's not fun happens, that whole stuff with the lawsuit, the delayed elections, those things there's such a massive boulder, it just runs me over and flattens me. I don't enjoy writing about that stuff. I don't enjoy it. And it just, to be honest, to be brutally honest, when things like that happen, it's just it's deflating. It really is deflating. I love doing stuff for emerging cricket because I really believe in them, and I believe in that brand and what it stands for. And that was my favorite podcast when I started doing stuff with them. I didn't miss a podcast of that. Just listening to how I loved it when they had, especially, it was great to have the players on as guests or things like that. But my favorite guests were when people related to people doing something for a national governing body would come in and talk about the way they're doing something, like why things are going this way in Italy, or why things are going this way in Germany. And you hear about the different flavors of the different problems that each national governing body has, because everyone's got every nation's different. Everyone has to deal with different issues. And that was the stuff that was the most fascinating to me. So working with those guys doing this stuff is just a passion that's I'm happy. I like doing it. But when it comes down to something that's bad news, it can be an albatross sometimes. It really can.
Well, for years and years, when this has come up, and a lot of people accuse me of being the most negative journalist in American cricket, or the most negative journalist in associate cricket, because half my articles are focused on election issues or governance issues. And I tell people essentially, nothing would please me more if for 365 days a year, I had matches to write about, matches to cover. And, if Ali Khan and Rusty Tehran rescuing USA in a super over and, running 2 byes off the final ball in Antigua, if that was happening every day for 365 days a year, I would write about that. Around. I would want more than happy or unhappy, but I would write about that for 365 days a year if that's what was happening. It just so happens that only happens 1 day a year, and 300 or 330 out of the other 365 days a year, there's no cricket happening. And instead, what's happening, a lot of off-field shenanigans that merit coverage. And so, hey, garbage in, garbage out. If that's what's happening, that's what's coming my way. That's what I'm going to shoot back out in my artitle. What do you want
now?
Me to
suddenly it's your fault. Now suddenly it's you're the negative one.
Shoot the messenger, baby. That's what it's all about.
Well, I don't like that. It's not fun. That's not fun. Now I've pretty much crapped all over the NGB, but the last year or so, 2021 set aside the negative things. 2021 was amazing year for cricket in the USA. I mean, there were so many things that happened. It was really eventful. Yeah, there were plenty of negative things. There was typical stuff that always happens. But as far as the cricket went, we had 4 national championships this year. That's pretty cool. We had minor league happen, and that went pretty well. Obviously, it's funny because any of the problems that happened in minor league were kind of predictable because of we already know kind of what the culture is like. And so you can predict some of the things that are going to happen.
You knew in June, July, Nate, that there was going to be a 50-something-year-old owner opening the batting for his team by the end of the season.
You knew that was going to happen. That was definitely going to happen. And it happened, 3 times, I think? At some point, 2 or 3 times, which isn't that
with multiple
bad.
Franchises, too. It wasn't just one franchise. It happened in a couple places.
It could have been a lot worse. And you knew that some guys were going to open their sons batting, and you knew that wasn't going to go well.
Hey, so if you're willing to put down the money to pay for a team, and that's how you want to run your team, you want to send your son in to bat. You bought a team just so you can have your son open the batting. If that's how you want to operate your team, and you paid for the team, and that more power to you. But don't act surprised when you wind up in last place at the end of the season.
Or if the league says we strongly frown upon this and you do it anyways, and the league doesn't want to trust you anymore. It should be viewed a privilege to have a franchise.
Hey, if Jerry Jones wanted to dump Tony Romo as starting quarterback a few years ago and start Stephen Jones as starting quarterback, he's the owner of the Cowboys. He could have done that if he wanted to, but as a billion-dollar franchise, I think Jerry Jones has the sense to know that maybe getting rid of Tony Romo for Stephen Jones might not be the best business decision if you want to run a successful franchise. That message hasn't quite registered with some of the minor league owners yet.
He didn't duplicate the value of his franchise by 2,000 times because of things like that. He is probably one of the more hands-on owners too, at least by reputation anyways.
But you never know. Minor league cricket, we could see one day Henry Rowan Gardner suiting up, bowling 100 miles an hour.
No, he would have to injure his shoulder. I think it was his elbow he injured. Was it his shoulder or his elbow?
It was his elbow. He broke his
elbow because he was he had that whip action. That was throwing the ball through people's gloves and stuff. Who knows? Maybe we will. I mean,
this is what we need in cricket. We need Henry Rowan Gardner and we need Steve Nebraska coming to play cricket. That'll explode. That'll launch the sport to a new stratosphere in America.
Right. Yeah, but my point is the problems that happen in minor league with 27 teams, the problems that happen there, we could predict them because we know the MO of some people around across the country. You need them to buy into the thing. You need them to buy into minor league cricket. You really do. You need that. You need that buy-in from people. So you got to expect that they're going to come around with their bullshit a little bit. It's I don't know if you're going to bleep that out or not, but you know what I'm saying. It's like you could predict some of those things that were going to happen. But by and large, I mean, look at the good decisions Major League Cricket made. First of all, they held the finals at Church Street Park. That's obvious. And so they're doing.
You say it's obvious, but considering all the political factors at play in American cricket, not necessarily. The fact that they overcame a lot of the political maneuvering and backdoor jockeying to still have the Church Street Park, I thought that was incredible.
Yes, it's the obvious decision to make when you look at it from a perspective of you want the thing to look good and you want people there. Those two things are easily checked off at that. That's the only place that checks off those two boxes automatically. It's the only place in the country that does that. And so from our point of view, it's the obvious thing to do. But like you said, you have to overcome the politics and stuff like that in order to get it there. And they stiff-armed that stuff and said, this is the smart thing to do and we're going to do it. And so they did it. And it was awesome. It was excellent. You were there. We had a good time. We got this, me, you, and Smith got to be in the same place at the same time together. And Smith got to sit in the VIP section. And but you know, I mean, so many amazing things happened this year, and the national governing body deserves to be praised for the things that went well. And of course, then we have the things that like, seem to be more typical. But yeah, the politics of cricket here is complicated.
Today's episode of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast, presented by DreamCricket, is also sponsored by Musa Cricket Stadium, the first and original turf wicket facility in the state of Texas, and now one of the premier venues for the minor league cricket T20 franchise tournament. Located at 5515 McKeever Road in Pearland, 5 miles off the Bailey Road exit from State Route 288, and a half hour south of downtown Houston, Musa Cricket Stadium includes fully enclosed locker rooms and change rooms plus shower facilities after a day's play, as well as outdoor nets for all your training needs. For more information, call 713-534-2195. That's Musa Cricket Stadium in Pearland, Texas.
Let me ask you about that. You've mentioned it a few times, emerging cricket, getting involved with emerging cricket as a writer, as somebody who's hosting podcasts and doing a weekly show for minor league cricket. And I am assuming those plans will expand further for next year for minor league cricket and potentially major league cricket when that launches in 2023. Running a weekly show for that, but then
fingers crossed. Yeah.
All the other graphic design work you do, you mentioned again in college you studied art, and all the graphic design work you do. I mentioned at the very, very start of the podcast that you helped design the cover jacket for my book Inside the Selection Room. So you wear many hats in emerging cricket and just in general. What for you do you get the most pleasure out of in terms of your involvement in emerging cricket to be able to produce the certain kind of content that you do?
The best thing about it is that like it gives me a chance to contribute to something that I believe in, and it gives me a chance to indulge myself almost. Like that's part of it, is like I get to write about things I like, and not only get to write about things I like, but people read it. That's another thing. It's like emerging cricket has an audience, so that's cool. I get to write about things that I like. I get to share my ideas sometimes, which I try to limit, because I'm I'm the type of person that I'll have a lot of ideas, and they're not always going to be good ideas. Nobody's ideas are always good. So I'm the type of person that will change my mind. If I have an opinion and somebody says, here's why your opinion sucks, and I think about it and I'm like, you're right, my opinion sucks, I'll change my opinion. So that's one of the reasons why I try to not always share my ideas or my opinions as much as we all want to share our opinions.
Are you trying to tell me that, Nate, that you were not motivated when you have had ideas shot down? You didn't ever contemplate the idea of starting a spite cricket website for writing your content?
One thing is emerging cricket has never said don't do that to me. I feel like I've screened myself all right too. I haven't really come up with any stinkers to them that I've like pushed really hard. Like I'll talk to them, hey, what do you think about this? And we'll go back and forth with somebody, usually Nick or something, or Tim or Bez or somebody else. And then, sometimes, that's a bad idea, I won't do that. But yeah, they've been really cool with like appreciating when I do have ideas and share it with them, and they pretty much just let me kind of do what I want to do most of which is amazing. And I have a ton of respect for those guys. They every one of them, all of those guys, Rod, everybody, Nish, Tom, there's a lot of talented people that really care, and the amount of work they put into what they do, it inspires me to do what I can do. But yeah, I love it. I think my favorite part is the excitement that we're doing something that nobody else is really doing. Not that nobody else is really doing, but you know what I mean. Like we're trying to do something that makes a difference. There are other people doing it, and just not the same way we're doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole site is about associate cricket. The whole site, everything is about associate cricket there. And emerging nations, emerging crickets, and there's other people. Yeah, I guess there are a couple other people doing that now, but it's, what I'm saying. It's like we're doing it not because it generates clicks, not because people look at the stuff, and we're not pushing, do more of this because it got a whole lot of views. It's more like this should be covered. We should do this. This deserves attention. If 1,000 people read it, great, that's awesome. If 100 people read it, then that's fine. Like there's always that debate about, for women's cricket, for example, a lot of people will say, well, we'll start to cover women's cricket when people start to demand it. And the other flip side of that is you create the demand by covering it. How that goes.
Chicken and the egg thing.
Chicken and the egg thing. And we get to say, well, okay, in our opinion, we should do the egg, So it's That's what I like about it and nobody's in it for themselves. Nobody's in it. Nobody's making any money, So it's like, it's a good group of guys. And then that's probably what I like the most about it, is the group of people that are involved, getting to chat with some people that come in and out, work, help when they can, because they just genuinely can't immerse all their free time into it. But yeah, I don't know what my favorite thing is about. Probably the people involved is my favorite thing.
Besides the 2024 T20 World Cup, what do you envision happening in the next 5 years or so with cricket in America, and what role do you want to play in that happening, whether it's for emerging cricket or through some other avenue or platform locally or beyond?
Like, what do I see in 5 years type of thing?
Is cricket still going to be in the same place where it is now, where you've got board members suing each other and election issues and registration issues and people fighting each other from league to league? Or do you think at some point in time, Nate, 2027, 2028, we might achieve some semblance of cricket utopia in America?
Well, that's not going to happen, that part. But I mean, things are getting better, and they're going to keep getting better. I believe that. But it's tough, because you look at where things should go and where all of us want things to go, and then you look at the people who are already there. You look at the boards that are already there, where we want to get our national team to, our national setup, the whole works, where we want to get that. And you look at the dysfunction just across the board in cricket in general. It's unbelievable. It's shocking. It's genuinely shocking. Just the amount of time somebody kind of like shoots themselves in the foot around the world. It's really disheartening. They get their priorities wrong, or they just make a genuinely stupid decision. We're in an age where, in sports in general, the fan isn't always much of a consideration. It's just the fact that we've had times in the past where there wasn't more done to get cricket matches played at Church Street Park, and instead they played in front of hardly anyone, 4 people or something. That's a shame. You should care about wanting people to see your national team product. That should be a priority. I mean, that should be a priority, that you go where people care about you. It should be a priority. It hasn't always been a priority. I think it's becoming more of a priority now. And that's, I do believe that that's happening, but it hasn't always been the priority. But yeah, I don't know, 5 years, I think things will be better. We'll have Major League Cricket at that point. Hopefully we'll be having more venues. You are one of yours. If there was a PDP drawstring doll, the first thing it would say is, I'll believe it when I see it. And there'd be a couple other things in there too, but that would be the first one. But yeah, so I think we get these venues going in the right places. I know that that's a big priority. Talking to Major League Cricket, a big priority is getting the venues in the right places, like we talked about. Just having a venue show up an hour away from a city in the middle of nowhere is not going to mean anything. It's going to be great in some ways. We need all the venues we can get, but as far as like a Church Street Park in the right place could be huge for cricket in this country. Church Street Park in New Jersey or New York, something like that happening would be massive. And so I think a couple of those things happen around the country. The sky's the limit. Yeah, I mean, I think things are going in the right direction. I really do. I mean, what do you think? I mean, things have changed a lot in the last 5 years around the whole country.
I tell you what makes me hopeful about something like Church Street Park and how that projects outward to the country and the example that set. One of the things you talked about was everybody wants their library named after them. And I think to myself, it's a miracle that Church Street Park is not named Cricket Administrator X Field, or alternatively, the RBC Bank cricket field or whatever, going the other way, a corporate overboard sponsorship, slapping the name rights on the field, which theoretically could be good because it means there's more money coming into the field. But the fact that they went the traditional route that tied it to the community and symbolized the community, I find that to be extraordinary, that somebody didn't step in and say, oh, no, I want the field named after me, or no, it should be named after this person. We should name it this way. Let's put, there's a couple of people whose names we should put, we should honor them, and guarantee you, none of them would have been a cricketer, and none of them would have been an American cricketer.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think yeah, you're right. I mean,
So that gives me hope. To answer your question, that gives me a bit of hope that there are people thinking in a right mind that we want to open up this field that will be by the community for the community, and that starts from the name on down. And you see all the wonderful things that you see at Church Street Park, which, hey, the gauntlet has been thrown down to the rest of the country and the rest of the cricket communities. You got to step up your game if you want to get things awarded to you in the same way that Church Street Park is.
And that said, Church Street Park is the source of so much hope in my mind. And that said, it took 10 years for Church Street Park to get to where it is today. It took a long time. And it's going to take a long time wherever it shows up next. It's just going to. It's funny, we were talking about USA possibly being a full member nation by 10 years from now. It'll take that long for the second Church Street Park to show up. I think things are going in the right direction. That's a great thing. But as far as the downside is, we're always going to have a lot of people running for board who are going to do things that, and I hope whoever listens to this takes note to this, because this is a sure sign that somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. When you will see a lot of people running for board, we're always going to have these guys that are going to talk about how, well, I'm going to get cricket into the NCAA. This is one of the topics you and I talk about the most. I'm going to get cricket in NCAA.
Hey, we've been going for close to 4 hours now. We could go another 4 hours just on this topic.
We could go for it from this topic alone. And they don't know. Yeah, they don't know anything about what's limiting that, Title IX and whatnot, and all these rules. And you look at, like, for example, let's look at how club teams become NCAA teams, not just sports, but the teams. You have to have a club team if you want. If you have, like, Penn State, for example, they have an NCAA ice hockey team now,
which wasn't always the case. And my cousin, one of my cousins was the goaltender for the Penn State ice hockey team when it was still a club sport. And this was only...
It was a club sport forever.
This was as recently as 15, 17, 18 years ago. We were the same age.
I was going to say,
And 2003, 2004, 2005, it was still a club sport. And the fact that it's now a varsity sport where you can compete for NCAA championships is extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. And that's come a long way. I knew people who played for Penn State when it was a club team. And it was just a passionate club team. So that eventually now they have a state-of-the-art facility. They got an amazing rink where they play their games, and it's beautiful. That took a long time just to get one team from club. That took years of people talking about it and rallying for it. And that finally became an NCAA team. So to get an entire sport in, you need to get a lot of clubs first, and you need a lot of clubs that have women's clubs. You need just as many of those. You need to start with things like that. They're not going to just say, let's start a women's cricket NCAA.
I think what's going through my mind is, if cricket were to become an NCAA sport, however many years down the line, I have this vision in my mind where cricket would be, again, it would be starting off as a fringe sport. Okay, it would be a non-revenue generating sport, most likely in the same grouping as golf or tennis or rowing or crew or gymnastics. And what goes through my mind is, in the spirit of American cricket history, how would cricket at NCAA level gain notoriety and gain a higher profile in America? More than likely, it would be the new age version of the Varsity Blues FBI sting, where you have rich parents using spots on the cricket team to try and pay their kid $100,000 to the cricket coach to say, hey, my kid doesn't actually play cricket, doesn't know what a cricket bat looks like or a cricket ball, but hey, we want to get this kid into USC or UCLA or Texas. Say, coach, here's a brown envelope with brown bag. Just get them onto the cricket team, and then once they get admitted to the university, then they can withdraw themselves and say, you know what, I quit the cricket team and I'm going to pursue other endeavors on campus. That would be so American cricket if that were to happen, and
that would be something. If cricket is going to become an NCAA sport, something like right here, we have 3 big college sports schools right in the same area. So if NC State, UNC, Duke all had a men's and women's cricket team and played all their games at Church Street Park at the club games, and they had clubs, and that grew. Then maybe they could make an NCAA division, but it would take some time. It would take a long time, and there'd have to be a demand for it. I think broomball has a better chance of being an NCAA sport right now than
there are a lot of
cricket
things.
does.
I think skateboarding, breakdancing, again, anything that's going into the Olympics right now has a much
Pickleball.
better chance. Pickleball absolutely has a much better chance of gaining traction at NCAA. Esports, for God's sake. Who would have taken
Yeah, that's
esports
true.
seriously as a scholarship endeavor? And yet Ohio State, other big universities, they've got scholarships awarded to their esports teams that they've formed. And I had seen, I don't know how many years ago, there was a Real Sports episode that profiled this kind of new phenomenon as it was happening. And sure enough, that was probably about 10 years ago. But sometime in the last year, I was going through some airport on the way in and out of Florida or Texas to one of the national tournaments. And yeah, in the airport, there was a group of about 8 or 9 kids who, at college age, who were in the, tracksuit training suit with whatever, I forget what college it was, but, the fully sponsored, fully embroidered university, Nike or Adidas kit. And, on the sleeve on the back, it was the, university esports gaming team. And I'm thinking,
Right.
holy shit, these guys can get funding and get recognition and status. And yet cricket, 55, 60 years plus beyond the USACA birth in 1965, where is the sport today? It's such a shame.
It's not outside of the realm of possibility that it becomes an NCAA sport, but
But again,
don't.
the steps to do it are steps that a lot of people don't want to do, and there's simple steps. You're getting women to play. If you're gonna get
that's the biggest one.
You've got to subtract the men's sport for Title IX. You got to subtract the men's sport to add men's cricket. So you've got to subtract men's tennis, men's golf, men's rowing, men's volleyball, men's gymnastics, men's wrestling, whatever. Good luck with that, because again, those are all Olympic status sports. Or you can add women's cricket at the same time as men's cricket. All you have to do is look at the membership data that was released in the USA Cricket membership rules to show what a monumental task that is, even though on paper it seems simple. But of all the members who are registered and eligible to vote, 95, 96, 97, 98% of them are men. Where are the women?
Yeah.
You need women to grow cricket in the country. Women's cricket has to be growing at the same rate as men's cricket. And as long as it's so far behind, and the support, financial and in terms of human resources in there, cricket's always going to remain behind. And yet once people wake up to that, you'll have the USA women's team be right on par with most of the other countries around the world, with the exception of maybe Australia and England. But how many people in India care about women's cricket? Not too many, because they demonstrate that by the fact that they still years later don't have a women's IPL. I don't know. We don't care about it. Right. And whether you agree with that decision, you could be the world's biggest misogynist and say screw the women, that that's a stupid idea, it's just going to burn money, whatever. It's short-sighted, because in the long term you're eliminating 50% of the potential target market from and you're excluding them from growth, from participation, from fan engagement, all these things.
You're stopping your ability to grow the men's programs.
So you immediately cut off 50% of the market. That's going to stunt your growth on the men's side too. And hopefully at some point in time the U.S. administrators will wake up to that.
And right now, as it stands, they would, in order to have an NCAA, if all of a sudden the NCAA was like, all right, we're going to do it, we're going to create 6 NCAA men's and women's teams, you'd have to give a scholarship to every single woman in the country that plays cricket, and they'd all have to go to college. It's like that's not going to happen. So you need vastly more women's cricketers around the country, and I'm optimistic that will eventually happen. I think Julia Price is doing a great job. She's very energetic, and she knows what she's doing when it comes to things like this. And she loves to travel. It's a really helpful thing when you want to spread, when you want to be Johnny Appleseed for women's cricket. It helps to like traveling. So I think things are going in the right direction. We didn't even know how many women's cricketers there were, 2 years ago. We had no clue, and now we have a sense, and that's a big thing. That's a big, just knowing is big. And then, you've pointed out several times, it's great to have the young teenagers involved in the women's team. already because they show a lot of promise. Like there's so many good. They're the ones that made the women's team deserved it. They're very good players. So that's very promising. And when the local leagues start to prioritize getting women's cricket in, and the national governing body has to incentivize that somehow. I have to find some way to say, hey, look, we want we want more women's programs, and you're the local league here. Make room. Try to make this happen. Make space. And if you can do that, there's a benefit. That would be nice. And I think that they're thinking in those terms. I believe they are. I believe they're really thinking about what they can do to encourage that. Because I think there's enough people now that know that we're only going as far as that goes. You know, like we can really expedite the whole of cricket in this country if we can expedite the women's program and the girls cricket in this country. That's massive. If we can do that, so many things open up and become possible. That's such a big thing, and any progress they made is great, is excellent, and they just got to do even more. You know, it has to be a priority. It's just so obvious.
Time will tell, Nate, whether these things happen in our lifetime before we die.
I'm most hopeful about that. Probably, I'm very hopeful about that.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, but I am hopeful about it because we're starting from here. And anytime you're starting from here, you don't have a whole lot of weeds. You know what I mean? It's like you got the flower bed, and you can make the culture better from the start, from close to the start in the women's game. Obviously, I'm saying it like they're completely independent of each other. Women's and men's cricket, they aren't. But as much as you can start better with the women's program than you can with just men's and boys cricket and around the country. It's already kind of it's got its ugly spots that are always going to probably be there.
The one thing that has been missing from the Stars and Stripes Cricket podcast for the first year, Nate, has been a guest capable of making deft botany references. And we need more green thumbs on the podcast, maybe to brighten up the show and talk about the weeds and the flower beds. I like that analogy very, very much.
Yeah, there you go. Every once in a while I pull one out, you know. But I try a lot of analogies. I tried tons of analogies. I just spit them out, and every once in a while one of them sounds good.
Bullseye right there. All right, time for the favorite 11 questions. You know the deal. You ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, sure.
As a Maryland native, I try and tailor certain questions to the guests where they're from. You talked about your stepdad was worked on a boat crab fishing. What is the favorite way to prepare a crab dish for you?
Steamed. Well, I got diagnosed with celiac 2 years ago. So crab cakes are kind of out the window, at least as I know them and as I enjoyed them. And fried crabs, fried soft crabs. I always loved eating soft crabs. Steamed, I've always like preferred steamed hard crabs the most. Steamed with Old Bay seasoning, or I have to look and see if Old Bay's gluten. I imagine it's gluten free. I don't think they're like sneaking any wheat or powder or anything in it. I haven't had crabs since before the pandemic. It's been that long. Now right now I'm feeling very sad. But yeah, steamed hard crabs. I can sit there and eat them for 3 hours, and I love picking them. I love the whole thing. I love talking, as you know. So I like sitting there at a table making a huge mess and talking to people while I suck crab meat out of a crab.
Your favorite Maryland sports moment growing up, the state of Maryland, not necessarily the University of Maryland, but Maryland related sports team growing up. Your favorite sports moment?
Growing up or my whole life?
Oh, your whole life. We can throw that in there.
The Capitals winning the Stanley Cup in 2018. Yeah, that was the biggest. That was the biggest. And then maybe probably Terrapins winning the National Basketball Championship in 2002. That was really big. That was awesome.
Juan Dixon. Remember that?
Juan Dixon. Yeah. Juan Dixon was the man on that team. And then he was something else. I actually had a Juan Dixon jersey up until recently. Yeah, so probably, yeah, the Capitals. The Capitals winning the Stanley Cup is number one. Absolutely. As a Caps fan, if people who were a Caps fan their whole life, like me, it's been a terrible journey. I mean, just like heartbreak all the time. I mean, how many times were we looking like the best team in the league, and then we could lose in the first or second round, and it would always go 7 games. Everything, always goes 7, and we'd lose in the 7th game, and yeah. So the Capitals for sure.
Your favorite non-Maryland sports moment in your life?
Ha, I bet you could guess this. Super Bowl 25. And then the second favorite would be the NFC Championship game before that.
I thought you were going to
Against the
flip it the other
49ers.
way around. I thought you were going to say the NFC title game in 1990.
That was, yeah, that game was amazing. I still watch that every once in a while on YouTube. I watched that one probably more than the Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl was because it was like different. The Giants won with a field goal and won, and they won because the other team missed a field goal on the other. But back then, a 47 yarder,
47-yard run, yeah.
47 yarder on grass back then. The ball was a little different for kicking, I think, and the kickers didn't have the science that they have now. I guess people would do crazy things like pack their foot into a shoe that was 2 sizes too small for their kicking foot,
or go
barefoot.
Yeah.
Go barefoot, which was always funny. Yeah, that was never 47 yards back then was maybe a 40% chance of making it. Most kickers between 40 and 50 yards were about 40% back then. Yeah, but that was my favorite moment, was the Super Bowl 25. And then the second favorite would be the national NFC Championship game.
You say you watch the NFC title game every now and then. One of my favorite calls of all time. There will be no three-peat.
Yeah, that might be the best. That might be as far as games go. That game was incredible. It was just, I mean, it was so dramatic. Of course, Roger Craig fumbling the ball, and
I just love
Montana.
stuff like nowadays, things you could never get away with, just because there's so much attention paid to body language, and you've got people in the coaches' boxes with binoculars looking at coaches. So like when the Giants ran the fake punt in the 4th quarter, you watch Bill Parcells, and he gives it away essentially. Like he looks at the Giants getting stopped on 3rd down, and then he goes like straight to his headset and like starts talking into his headset. And if you pay attention, like now it looks obvious, but
nowadays it was
in the moment, like you would never ever see that happen. Nowadays they would never give it away that obviously, and it's clear that like nobody was paying attention to like spying Bill Parcells on the sideline to see his body language to give that away, that they were going to run the fake punt.
Yeah, and Bill Parcells himself was like kind of the bad guy on the team, because nobody liked playing for him. He was a taskmaster, I mean, he was a tough cookie. Like nobody really liked to play for that guy, and he had his little weird wearing the same pants all the time but don't have a button and all that. But yeah, that game was probably the best game. Like,
we're running up quite a list of things, Nate, that 99% of the people watching and listening to this podcast will go straight over their heads. So we're referencing there will be no three-peat. The fake punt, the 47-yard field goal, Scott Norwood. We've thrown in Henry Rowan-Gartner and Steve Nebraska.
Henry Rowan-Gartner, that was a good one. Yeah.
or Rutabaga, as
yeah,
the Cubs manager called him in the movie.
He got locked in the cage. That guy, yeah.
I wonder how many of these things people are going to be actually bothering to go look up on Google, or what the hell are these guys talking about? Henry Rowan-Gartner,
right? Maybe, yeah. There you go. Hopefully people watched that movie. It was one of the greatest child movies ever.
Your favorite cricket ground experience that you've had as a player or as a fan, whether that's at Church Street Park or somewhere else?
So as a fan, Church Street Park, when Stephen Taylor and let me say Ali Khan was in the middle with him, running with him. When he chased 22 and when they needed 22 to win in that last over, and he did it in 5 balls against Canada, that was amazing. That whole week was incredible. It was one of I think about that my favorite episode you've done so far was with Mark Stolman, And it was because of how fun it was to reminisce when he's talking about that week, how great it was. And like thinking back about it, it was so much fun. It was amazing. But yeah, that was my favorite cricket moment as a fan. As a player, I took 4 wickets one time and got man of the match and it was like, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a good cricketer, so I don't have too many of these moments. So it stands out. Like we were there was a team that was chasing us down, and we were like, our backs were to the way. It wasn't looking good for us. And then I took 4 wickets, and I could have taken a hat trick if I had just listened to my captain, who was like, do you want me to bring the deep point in to the inner circle? And I was like, no, may as well just play it safe still, because at the time the game was still kind of in question. And then the guy like just flubbed the ball directly to point, just plopped it right over and I was like, he would have been there to catch that ball, I would have had a hat trick. But yeah, that was fun. It was just fun to help my team out, all the guys that I really like and have a great time and care about. And it's always fun to like be the guy that gets getting man of the match. So that's, as far as a player, that was one of the few good moments.
Your favorite cricketer of all time?
That's a tricky one. The first cricketer I really liked was Moeen Ali. Was the first guy I like kind of like really like that I was like, I love that guy. So he might be my favorite cricketer of all time. That's not North American. I don't want to say who my favorite North American. I don't want to say that because I write about these guys so much and things like that. I don't want to say that. But probably Moeen, my favorite cricketer who doesn't play for USA currently, or Canada currently, I should say. Moeen and Hayden Walsh Jr. are my favorite. And Hayden used to play for USA. So, but yeah, favorite 2 guys who aren't currently playing for USA or in the USA system or Canada would be Moeen and Hayden Walsh Jr. Both of those guys.
Your favorite non-cricket athlete of all time?
Jeff Hostetler, probably. Cal Ripken Jr., Rod Langway, Joe Montana. I loved Joe Montana. Eddie Murray.
No, hold on a second. How are you a Joe Montana fan and a Giants fan? This is not kosher.
So before I started liking the Giants, I just liked Joe Montana because he was the best player in the 80s, But yeah, probably Jeff Hostetler is probably my favorite because of the great memories I have as a kid cheering for him. Him and Cal Ripken probably are my 2 favorite.
So what was going through your mind then as a Joe Montana fan turned Giants fan when Leonard Marshall comes off the end and
I didn't like that he got hurt. He got killed. That was one of the most brutal hits. Literally. I mean, you can't name 10 hits in NFL history that were that visually brutal. Like it looked terrible. I didn't like that he got hurt, obviously, but I liked that helped their chances of winning. I mean, it really did. Even though Steve Young is on the bench, I mean,
As a Giants fan, and again, family season ticket holder for 48 years, going to games growing up, when in Giants Stadium, and even the few games I've been to in MetLife Stadium, where they run the sizzle reel 5 minutes before the teams walk out of the tunnel, whatever, and
got to be there.
Get the fans fired up. The 2 staples that have been in every single sizzle reel video for the Giants every year, every time I've ever gone to a game, the ones that never ever got taken out of the tape, Leonard Marshall taking out Joe Montana and Mark Bavaro carrying Ronnie Lott 20 yards downfield. and watching the Mark Bavaro clip every single time without fail gives me goosebumps. I get so fired up watching that clip, and then I'm like, let's go. They can replace in the video. They can reduce the number of LT clips in favor of Strahan or Tuck or some of the other defenders that have risen up over the years. They can reduce some of the Phil Simms montage in favor of Eli Manning or, Kerry Collins before Eli Manning when Collins took the Giants to the Super Bowl. Some of that stuff varies over the years. The 2 things that never, ever, ever change: Leonard Marshall taking out Joe Montana and Mark Bavaro carrying Ronnie Lott.
If they don't have the O.J. Anderson wind up forearm,
no,
they got to have that. That's the one. That's probably the scene from that whole season that I think about that like runs in my mind. That and Hostetler not having the ball stripped by
Bruce
what's
Smith.
his name? Bruce Smith, who, how do you stop him from taking, how do you pull your hand away from this dude's got his full hand around you?
But Nate, how is that going to fire somebody up if they're 5
It's
minutes?
not going to fire someone up. Like he saved the team 5 points. Like that.
I know you love hot show, but that's pushing it a little bit to expect that.
That was tough. That was a tough play to watch in real time. You realize later how important that was, that he didn't lose the ball. But he tripped on Otis Anderson. He tripped on he as he's going back into his drop. Otis Anderson steps back into his drop back, and that's how he fell. But yeah, the OJ wind up is, like, to me, the perfect moment.
All right, your favorite place to eat out on tour or away from home? So outside of Morrisville, outside of Maryland, where's your go-to stop?
Right now, it's anything that's gluten-free, and I love Mexican food. So if I find like an old Mexican joint somewhere, I'm happy. I love Mexican food. That's my favorite. Mexican food. I love Indian food too. So yeah, Mexican food. If I can find an old Mexican joint, so like, not old, but like family-run Mexican joint, then I'm happy.
And what's your go-to menu item that you can find that's gluten-free on a Mexican menu?
Corn shell tacos. Like I like chicken tinga tacos are my favorite. So like the soft corn tacos.
Now, I used to make this question the Coke or Pepsi question, but I think I've had to decide to retire that because it was getting quite one-sided, as much as that pleased me. So
Okay.
Your favorite beverage of any kind?
Cherry Coke.
Cherry
Well,
Coke.
of any kind, so they can also have alcohol in it. No, I don't want to sound like
Or actually alcohol or juices. Not everybody's a drinker.
My favorite soda is Cherry Coke. And to answer the other question, Coke over Pepsi. Yeah, probably my favorite drinks are lemonade or Cherry Coke. Those two. I love both of them. I don't drink it as much but if I go to Five Guys, I always have to have Cherry Coke because it has the special magic machine that makes it whatever mixture you want.
Those things are amazing. That they've got like 100 different flavors of soda.
And all I want is Cherry Coke.
Because it used to be, before those magic fountain machines came into existence, you just had the 6 options. Coke, Sprite,
Right.
Diet Coke, Barks, maybe
Right.
1 or 2
Yeah.
other things, Dr. Pepper. Now,
Right.
and Cherry Coke, you're never going to find Cherry Coke in your standard soda fountain.
Most places don't have Cherry Coke, so the fact that it has Cherry Coke is great. But this is one of those things we're going to tell our kids when we grow up. It'll be like, we used to have to watch TV. If we had a show that we wanted to watch, we had to be sitting there at 10 a.m. to watch the cartoon we wanted on Saturday. And if we went to Fuddruckers, we had to mix up our flavors. We didn't have this magic red machine that pumped out whatever soda you wanted. Like
I'd like to meet the guy who has the patent on that. The thing is extraordinary.
It's amazing. It's incredible. I would hate to have to change all the bags all the time, but it is pretty cool. I bet the back of the house where all those lines go and everything connects to a different box full of syrup. I bet that there's just a massive heap of syrup right there. I mean, just boxes.
Your favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni.
Your favorite movie of all time?
I loved Star Wars growing up, but probably my favorite. There's 2 movies that I can't change if I've come across them when I'm flipping. I can't change, and that's Ghostbusters and Back to the Future. But I really liked Edward Scissorhands a lot because that was just a really cool movie. So those are probably my favorites, and then Empire Strikes Back. Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back and Back to the Future Part 2 and Karate Kid Part 3. When I was growing up, we had HBO in our house, and you could count on those 3 movies being on a loop on HBO every single day, pretty much.
Yeah.
Not the first Star Wars, not Return of the Jedi, not Back to the Future 1 or 3, but Part 2, The Empire Strikes Back, and Karate Kid Part 3, not 1 or 2, Part 3, all 3 of those on a loop, nonstop.
Yeah, I love Ghostbusters. Probably if I had to choose one, it would be Ghostbusters. Probably. I loved that movie. Still do.
What's your take on the relaunch Afterlife? Did you take that in?
Haven't seen it. I don't know. So I'm like, I like the movies that I liked when I was a kid. Whenever something relaunches or something like that, I really just don't care because it's not going to be anywhere near the same.
Well, to me, it just shows again, now, the Matrix, the newest edition of the Matrix, and some of these other things. It just shows to me, the lack of creativity and the lack of ingenuity in Hollywood nowadays. I haven't been to a cinema in ages because nothing interests me. All the
same with me.
dumb.
like Scorsese was talking about that, and he's dead right. It's like, I don't care about comic book films. I'm 41 years old. It's like that stuff mattered to me a lot. I wish they had made that stuff in 1994. I would have gone to it all the time. I would have loved it. But like now, I'm kind of just like, I don't care about comic book movies. I just want to watch a good movie. That's what I want to see, is a good movie. Yeah. So I mean, I agree with him. Like I don't want someone to pander to like my nostalgia. I don't want that. Like I've got my nostalgia, and I'll watch, if I want to be nostalgic, I'll watch the thing that I'm nostalgic about. I won't watch something else that's trying to exploit that.
If you want nostalgia, you're going to YouTube to find the NFC Championship game 1990.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, right.
All right. Last but not least, your favorite show to binge watch: Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Paramount Plus, streaming service du jour, DVD box set. What's the show you use to fill the time when you've got plenty of it?
I love watching TV with my wife. So it's pretty much whatever we get into, I'm happy to watch it. I think I loved Breaking Bad a lot. Game of Thrones, I loved those shows quite a bit. There hasn't been anything. I think the first one that my wife and I watched together was probably my favorite show, and that was Carnival, that was on HBO. It was like when we first got together, we would watch that. And I thought that show was great up until the last episode. And then it was like, oh my God, they killed it. But that show was fun. I loved looking forward to watching that with her. So probably that, or, well, really my favorite thing to binge is going on YouTube and watching old football games or old cricket games or something. I like the other day I watched San Francisco versus Cincinnati, that second Super Bowl. I watched the whole thing on YouTube the other day just because I just want to watch it again, So that's probably what I like to binge, is old sports games.
Nate Hayes, thank you so much for coming on the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast. I'll give you the final word. Anything else that we haven't already discussed? I know there's still plenty of things. This is just the tip of the iceberg for us. But anything else you want people to know about you, your journey in cricket, or anything else you want to share?
Just support your national governing body wherever you are, and try your local cricket, and read Peter and read me, and go to emergingcricket.com and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm just kidding. I don't have anything else to say other than, watch this and read our things. And thank you. If you do that already, it's awesome. Thank you so much.
We were talking before recording about people who we leave out. We're inevitably going to piss off somebody. You don't need to read Smith, not necessary to read Smith Patel.
There are some people who I could have mentioned before that I didn't mention. We didn't talk about Supriya and how people like her who are just really interested in what's going on, like
they get her in just before the finish line at the 4.5 hour mark. Nate, well done.
Well, I mean, like you've said before, we could use 1,000 of her, or we could use a ton of people like her.
We need people like her. Phil Melky,
Phil
Smith,
PJ Hodels.
PJ, yes. You can have a stab at that. I've humiliated myself before.
PJ,
but,
yeah, there's so many people.
Aman Patel,
Patel,
Smith. Yeah. I try and be supportive. Emily Reynolds, yeah. But the cricket media contingent in America is so tiny. And it's growing. We've had this conversation before, I think, where people are like, "Oh, you must be thrilled," and like, no, it sucks. Like, oh, you must like having, not too much competition. No, it would be wonderful to have a cricket championship, whether it's the T20 World Cup or MILC or Major League Cricket, where there's a media box, plain and simple, not just like a holding table set up because we're expecting like Nate, Peter, and Smith to show up at the last minute.
Right.
That there's actually a dedicated media box for media because they're expecting not just 3 people to show up at the last minute, but 15, 20, 30, 40 people who demonstrate their support for cricket by wanting to cover it and bring exposure to all these players in the whole cricket ecosystem.
And Steve, who writes about it on his blog and writes some articles for Major League Cricket. Obviously, Tom and of course, Tom Dunmore, and of course, Andrew Leonard, who's all over the place now. It's like every time I watch something, he's doing the commentary. It's really cool. It's like they did the earthquake that happened last week, like and Nikhil. Yeah, it's nice to see things growing, and I don't think people realize it. I think, like you said, people think that we're going to be competitive with each other and things like that. But
We've
no,
had it for people who don't know. We've had it 5 guys together. That's the bond that I have with Nate. We've had our 5 guys. I've had 5 guys with Smith. We have that connection.
We had 5 guys, and it worked out in my favor because we did the you buy for me and then I buy for you, and the you buy for me was in California where everything's like way more expensive. So yeah,
but I don't just have 5 guys with just anybody.
No, and you don't buy 5 guys in California for just anybody either.
I forgot Lenny. I've had 5 guys with Andrew Leonard. He's
good.
On the list. I've had 5 guys with Phil Melky in Dubai. Me, Smith, and Phil Melky went to a 5 guys in Dubai Marina back in December 2019 together. When Phil, America's super fan, got his Smith was the one who really stepped up to get Phil an Elmore Hutchinson jersey after coming all the way from Ohio to Dubai. That was Smith. Smith has to take credit for that one.
You can't beat that jersey. You can't beat that one.
And we said, hey, Phil, you came all this way. We got to take you out to 5 guys. You're coming to dinner with us. And so
perfect.
And I think anyhow, we had our cricket writing to do after the match that day. I think USA played Scotland, I want to say. Yeah, so we went to 5 guys at like 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m., whatever it was, because the 5 guys in Dubai, that stays up until like 2 or 3 a.m. So it's not like the ones in America where they close at 10 or they close at 11. You can go late night in Dubai to 5 guys, and me, Smith, Phil, we had awesome. That. So,
you wouldn't know it because it's known for its burgers, but I can't eat gluten because of the celiac. But 5 Guys is one of the places I can absolutely go to confidently because they have those hot dogs, and the hot dogs are totally gluten free. And
the hot dogs are amazing.
And their hot dogs are great because they do the thing where they cut it in half and they put it on, flat side down.
I don't know any other way to have a hot dog now anymore.
That's Nate. Exactly how I do it too.
This is like before the world was flat and now the world is round with a 5 Guys hot dog cut in half.
Now the hot dogs have to be flat. Yeah, and it's the best way to do it. You got to put them down flat side down first. Because if you do the back side, it's going to get all curly and weird. You know what I mean? You have to put the flat side down first. So, I make them that way now. They even curly and weird, it's still good. Yeah. So, 5 Guys is one of the places I can absolutely count on. Because their dogs are gluten free. They give them to you in a special container to make sure no gluten touched it. But I mean, going back to the people around the country, there's so many people that I didn't name enough of them. But there's more people now involved in spreading the word and that's one thing I love about Major League Cricket, minor league cricket, is that their willingness to get people involved who want to get involved. Like Emily, you had her on your show. That's one of the most optimistic things about it to me. I mean, imagine 5 years ago that happening. Emily saying, I just got into cricket, I'd like to help. And somebody saying, sure. That didn't used to happen.
And not only do we want your help as a volunteer, we're actually going to give you a job, a full-time paying job to help out.
Yeah, right. Like that never used to happen. That was never even a possibility. And there have always been people who just get involved, who put their hand up and say, I want to help, I want to volunteer. Tim Lowell is a what is it called? Volunteer coordinator.
Youth coordinator, yeah, in Texas.
Yeah, down in Texas. That's great. They're getting people involved now who weren't always weren't the good old boys. You know what I mean? It's nice to see that, and that gives me a lot of hope. So that and USA did that with Tim. Wasn't a major league thing, but yeah, just get involved with the USA stuff. Follow USA Cricket. Everybody who's watching this already follows USA Cricket. But yeah, keep doing it and spread the word, and we'll have a good product here soon. We have one already, so it's fun. And you keep doing what you're doing. And like I said, people think that you and I compete with each other or something, and that's not. I don't think it'd be further from the truth. Like the amount of times you've helped me out, it's been incalculable. So
it's a two-way street, Nate. I can say the same about you. You've helped me. We're giving away the trade secrets here, Nate. I don't know. We should be saying this stuff.
Right. And that's the cool thing is like I don't always agree with everything that we talk about. I don't always agree with you. I don't always agree with Smith. But that's okay. You know what I mean? It's like most of all we agree on the important things. But that's kind of cool to see. Yeah, Smith's got his point of view. You got yours. I got mine. That's neat. I think that's healthy to have that. So yeah, more of this, please.
Nate Hayes, emerging cricket contributor and expert cover art book designer and cricket player, cricket do everything hat wear in the Morrisville cricket community. Thank you so much again for coming on the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having 2 nights in a row. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Well, hopefully we squeezed enough cricket in there in between all the non-cricket discussion with Nate, but it was an entertaining experience for me, and I hope it was for you as well, whoever is watching and listening out there. I want to remind everybody that you can get the latest episodes of the Stars and Stripes Cricket Podcast on YouTube by subscribing on there. If you want to watch or if you want to listen, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. I also want to encourage everybody to subscribe and become a supporter of the podcast on Patreon. Everybody who has done so thus far contributes to help make the podcast happen on an episode-by-episode basis. That's it for now. I'm Peter Del Penna, reminding everybody, God bless America and God bless American cricket.